Hi everyone, I am Amalie from Sinners Inc. and I'm here to share a few words with you about moving to Japan and living and working there. So I started my tattoo career in Sinners Inc. when I was an apprentice about 9 years ago. I studied under Mark Vascarao as my teacher, and I stayed here for about 3 years. Then I moved to Copenhagen to pursue love, and I lived there for 5 years. And then me and my now fiance Jacob, we decided to move to Japan and give that a shot. So it was something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've had a connection to Japan ever since I was a child because I did karate when I was younger. And I would go ever since I was 12 years old. I would go to Japan every second year to compete in the World Championships. So I had this connection to Japan through that. And my father and my brother also practiced the sport, so it was like a family thing. And my father also lived there in the 80s, and I've seen all his amazing photos from there, and it was always so inspiring. But when I was there with the sport, I never really had the surplus to really go on adventure because I was just focused on that. So when I met Jacob, my fiance, we went to Japan together, and it was the first time I could really explore the place without having the stress of going to a world championship. So that was quite something. And I knew that I wanted to live there at some point in my life. So when we were both at that same state of mind, we just decided to sell our apartment in Copenhagen, pack everything up, and just try it out. So he quit his job, I quit my job, we sold the apartment, and yeah, off we went. The idea wasn't to work a lot. Japan is not the most ideal place for a tattooer from Denmark coming to work, since the laws are quite different than here. So it's kind of a gray area where you can't say it's actually illegal, but it's illegal to practice tattooing if you don't have a medical license. So if you're not a doctor, in short words, you can't tattoo. But still there are amazing tattooers in Japan and other places like Korea where it's still prohibited to tattoo. I worked at 2 studios. I had previously been a guest artist at this studio called Detroit Diesel Tattoo Works, where I was tattooing under my 2 bosses, Mika-san and En-san, both absolutely incredible tattooers, and their apprentice, Miyuki-san, who all became really great friends of mine. So when I moved there, and I didn't say I was working, I just wanted to go to experience the culture. They were like, you should come work. And I was like, I didn't want to ask them for work because I wanted to keep our friendship in the honeymoon phase, so I had someone I could just be friends with, and I didn't expect too much of them when I came to their country. But they kept on saying I should come work, so of course I would love to. So I did that a few times a week, nothing too major, but it was a really incredible experience to actually get a little taste of the Japanese tattoo culture as well. It's quite different from here. There's a lot of hierarchy, and even though my coworker Miyuki-san had been working for almost 10 years just like myself, she is still an apprentice, and she still set up stations and she cleaned my station because that's the custom there, and it's something I had to get used to. And after I saw how much pride she put into her work, it was something that I respected a lot and could see wasn't unfair. It's just a custom, and there are a lot of things about the Japanese society that ended up being like that. When we first came to Japan, we lived at a bunch of different Airbnbs, some of them scruffier than others, some of them very small, very tiny, definitely not suited for Jacob, my fiance, who's almost 2 meters tall. But we ended up finding a really cool place in an area called Shimokitazawa, which is a very lively neighborhood. And it seems like people go there when they have time to just hang out, have fun, go to really amazing restaurants, bars. There are a lot of fun fashion, vintage fashion. So yeah, in general, it's a really cool area, and also you don't get stared at as much when you're a tattooed person, because there are a lot of young people and a bit more people with tattoos. So I didn't feel like I stuck out like a sore thumb as I did in some of the other neighborhoods. So that was really cool as well. Sort of my idea of what I would be doing in Japan was that I wanted to study calligraphy. It's something that I always found really interesting, very inspiring, and I wanted to learn a new craft since tattooing was something I didn't think I was going to be doing in Japan until I got the offer. But that was my original plan. But then life happened and we just ended up exploring Japan and exploring what it's like to not work every day. And it's something that put life into perspective, and it made me realize what I really liked about my life at home and what I wanted to not proceed doing when I went back. And it was amazing to find out how much I love working, and it's not something I do out of habit or a necessity. It's something I really enjoy doing every day, and I'm very thankful I get to do. Yeah. So the tattoo culture in Japan is very different from Denmark. In Denmark, you see a lot of people tattooed openly. There's still discrimination, but nothing close to what is in Japan, where it's actually prohibited to exist in a lot of spaces. So I couldn't go to a gym. I couldn't go anywhere where I needed to change clothes with other people. One thing I really enjoy doing in Japan is going to onsen, which is like a natural source spa, usually combined with traditional hotels in Japan. And we found one place that accepted the way I looked, and we kept going back to that place, and I have so many amazing memories. But that was kind of a challenge, but that being said, I have it much easier because I'm a gaijin, I'm a Westerner, I'm a foreigner. So the Japanese people who are tattooed, they're judged much harsher than I was, so I had it very easy. When you're born and bred in Japan, it's expected that you know the intricacies of the tattoo culture and what it symbolizes. And it has a lot of association with gangs. They're Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, and in general with crime. So back in the old days, if you committed a crime, you would get a tattoo that corresponded with that crime. So the worse a crime, the more visible a tattoo. So if they see a person with a face tattoo and they're an old person, the first connotation is to think that they've done something despicable. So the more visible it is, the worse a person they think you are, which we of course know is not the case, but that's the association that it has still in Japan. You also experience that in day-to-day life. When I was tattooing there, I wouldn't get as many requests as I get here. First of all, because a lot of them would prefer going to a Japanese tattooer. They know it's more safe. They've seen their work. Maybe they've seen it on friends. They know it's a safe space. But I was very honored and humbled to see how many people actually wanted to still get tattooed by me. And I really appreciate that. And I see a change in the culture when it comes to that, because it's different than even just a few years ago. So as some of you might know, I mostly do realistic tattoos, and micro-realism to be a bit more exact. And I didn't find a lot of people in Tokyo who did that style, and the people I worked with were also not accustomed to that style. But I think it was kind of a force and a strength more than something bad, because most Westerners who go to Japan to tattoo, they try to pursue Japanese tattooing and more traditional styles of tattooing, which you can try to emulate, but there will still always be the Japanese masters who have done it for ages and who know exactly the dogmas of the Japanese style. So I think it was a good thing that I was doing something completely different, and we could learn from each other. And we could be fascinated by each other's work, but not trying to emulate what each other did. So when I first worked in Japan, I was doing a guest spot. And I was working with Mika-san and En-san, who I mentioned before, who were a couple. And they have since split up, so it's now 2 shops. And the one that's been there for maybe 20 years by now is a bit more hidden. It's in a very residential area. You go to a convenience store, you go up a few flights of stairs, you're kind of led into one room where you state what your business is, and then if you have an appointment, you're led into the actual studio. Whereas the new studio, En-san's studio, is much more out in the open. It's just glass windows, it says custom tattooing and gold lettering across the windows, so it's much more out there, which leads me to believe that there is a change happening. It's not quite as hidden anymore, and there's been some kind of consensus amongst the Japanese tattooers that they can't arrest all of us, or if they do, there's gonna have to be a talk about the law that is now in place in Japan. I think it's about 2 years ago that there was a lawsuit against a Japanese tattooer from Osaka who was charged with illegally practicing tattooing. And he actually won the case, which is a big step towards tattooing maybe becoming a bit more accepted in Japan. So there's also been talk about the Olympics that are supposed to happen in Tokyo, were supposed to happen this summer, that they're gonna loosen a bit of the guidelines in a lot of restaurants and maybe onsens, like bath houses, because there'll be a lot of tourists, a lot of visitors with tattoos, along with a lot of the athletes who are actually competing in the Olympics who are also tattooed. So maybe there will be a positive change around that time. So one of the things that really made me want to live in Japan and have more of a day-to-day life there instead of just being a tourist is the fact that they have so much integrity in what they do. You see it in all walks of life in Japan, whether you're a CEO of a big corporation or you're the guy who wipes off the handrail on the escalator on the metro station. People do their work with such pride that it really demands pride from the people who are watching or experiencing the amount of service and the level of service and pride they have in their work. And that's something I was very inspired by. There's amazing attention to detail. There's nothing left to chance. And everything is just done 100%. And I think it's something that all of us could learn from. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. And that's very inspiring to me. One of my major passions besides tattooing is food, which is also one of the huge reasons why I wanted to live in Japan. I absolutely love Japanese food. And once again, I love the care in which it's prepared with. There's a lot of, once again, like pride, intricacies in their food, and it's such a pleasure to watch. So we would go to a lot of izakayas, which is like a mix of a bar and a restaurant. And like a lot of things in Japan, it's kind of built into different spheres and you operate or act accordingly. So an izakaya is a very social, very lively place. Most people are seated around the bar and it's open to conversation with strangers. So it's a very amazing way to kind of get into the flow of the Japanese life, get to know some locals, and get into the Japanese culture a bit more. So that's something we practice quite a lot, is eating and going to izakayas and restaurants. Well, if you've watched this far, I'm very happy that you tuned in and wanted to listen to my journey to Japan and back. And I have so much more to say, but it's very hard to summarize all of it. So I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. And I hope we're working our way towards a more accepting tattoo culture in Japan, less taboo, so we can actually put spotlight on some of the absolutely amazing artists that are in Japan. Thank you.